Good evening. You are listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Xtreme Studios in the Pine Nose Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. Of the young 20-something Professor Pixel, also from Orlando, Florida, here discussing Columbo in our Season 2 review that we don't normally do here of Columbo. Of course, I'm talking about Episode 3 tonight with Pixel, and it's the most crucial game. Pixel, obviously, we don't rarely do season 2s of anything. We experiment and see what's really popular. And outside of Twin Peaks, I think this is our first stab at it. Columbo's been great. I'm really excited to talk about this episode because, like I've said in the past 2 episode reviews, there's obviously been a change in the way things are shot. It's still 3 episodes, and we get no dog. We get no goofy-ass partner. But for some reason, I think this episode 3 is much better than the other 2, partly or mostly probably to the fact that we've got Robert Culp back, who does a tremendous acting job in here. And despite the fact that it feels different than season 1, I think this is just a pretty damn good episode. Definitely piqued my interest a lot more than the first 2 for a lot of reasons, and we'll start talking about him here shortly. What's your initial view of this episode?
I'm excited that we finally have somebody back. I'm very delighted to go ahead and have Robert Culp back because it's very interesting to see somebody that we've already seen go against Columbo do it again. It's a different character, but that face, you can't forget that face. See, the thing is, though, I'm not a big sports guy, so whenever the football game came on, I was like, okay, it's just the background. It's just the piece.
To put in perspective, the LA Coliseum there, where I believe they had the 1984 Super Bowl or Olympic stuff going on too, is a tremendous site. Been around a long time. I don't remember if the owner of that one also owned the Forum in Los Angeles that the Lakers had, who also owned the Redskins at the time, Jack Kent Cooke. I don't know that. I believe it was the home place of Southern Cal, the Trojans. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure I'll get corrected on it, but I will say this. I think it's the place where the Raiders used to play. And back then they were badasses under John Madden. Without doing the research at all, those are all the things to come to mind, because if you didn't know any better and you watch this episode, I agree with someone young like you, the young 20-something, you look at this and go, hey, they must have been really excited to use a lot of aerials and stock shots here of football games using the old wing T formation and stuff, because that's exactly what it is from over 50 years ago. Wow, that was different.
I do have to say, though, with that playing alongside of it, it being sorry, I had the scene playing, and Robert Culp just ate the ice cream bar just after he had finished running away, telling the kid no. Sorry, but no. I did enjoy the setting, the game going ahead and being the background piece to go ahead and be his alibi for the Moida, which we'll get to.
Yeah, this setting is different, which is good. For some reason, I really like the way this episode looked with the driving back and forth to the kill zone, to the place that it happens in the pool on the Hollywood Hills, I'm guessing. The house, I don't know if we've seen this house or not before, but man, what a great looking print. If you're watching it on Peacock or the Internet Archive for free, or perhaps Tubi or wherever else you get a link for here in the United States, this is just visually a very good looking, well shot episode. You feel like you're in there while Columbo's investigating it, because it turns out that and I don't know if the mustache is real. I didn't even really care about Robert Culp. I remember him. I think it's the Greatest American Heroes, kind of like a dim-witted sidekick sort of stuff, or I don't know what. But for me, he really gets a lot of range in here because he's not yelling and screaming. He's a high-profile guy. He runs the sports team as a general manager, and that's big-time pressure. But the owner is basically a son who inherited the team from his dad, and so he basically wants to take him out of the picture so he can run everything. So he says, hey, you need to sober up from your sex parties that you're having there when your wife's out of town, which is really what's going on. And I'm going to come pick you up because we're going to go to Montreal to buy another thing, whatever like that. But that's the setup, right? So the beauty of it is he pays the dude off in his skybox to leave and all that. And you know what? I'm going to point this out half jokingly, half seriously. Obviously, there's video clips showing the stadium and football games, and so some of it's filled in with actors and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But when they're doing the national anthem, And he's like trying to walk around and leave. Back in the day when you would open up a door, you would, first of all, you'd never wear your hat. You would all, if you're walking somewhere, you'd automatically stop while it was going on. But it's funny because he's sneaking out of there and he's going to go murder this guy. And what does he do? He goes into the ding-a-ling ice cream truck, sir.
Yes, he does.
He goes over, and what do you have in an ice cream truck, sir, besides ice cream?
Yeah, you have ice.
You have ice, exactly. That's the genius of what we're watching unfold here, because he pulls up to set up his alibi by making a public phone call, because we don't have public phone booths for the most part anymore. And the little kid wants to get some ice cream, and he ignores it, and he goes up there.
Give me ice cream, no!
Well, that was intentional because that's going to be a call. That's going to be a callback later in the episode, right? Yeah. So we know this, but we get the noise of the stadium going away. You just see him driving down up into the hills and all that. And he gets to, is it Eric, I think is that? And I go, this guy looks familiar. And I'm like, oh, I just started watching a Today Show, which I never watched at the time, and that would be Quantum Leap. So this is Dean Stockwell at a younger age. I'm like, oh, you'd been around for a while, bro. And he's in a pool hungover, and he's talked about hooking him up with some chick and this and that. And we don't know how it's going to die. You know, guns are guns. I'm not against them. I like violence. They try to sensationalize it or make it creative and unique in here without showing the actual act, which I appreciate. And what do we get here, sir? A big block of ice upside the dude's head as he falls slow motion in the pool. That would be the Nestle plunge, aka Don Meredith from the 70s. I'm stoked at this point, sir. What about you?
I'm enjoying it.
This is fun.
He's wearing. It's so ridiculous, though.
Hey, service industries used to dress up back then. Ice cream trucks, they do it. It's great.
He escapes through the back way out of his office. He dresses up like an ice cream man. He has this ridiculous mustache.
Yes. Facial hair in the 70s. Oh, tremendous. Yes.
That mustache alone should have been the thing that made Columbo realize he did it.
Man. That warms you up like, steak and eggs. And scotch. And chocolate ice cream bar at the end.
But he kills the guy with ice. Yes, he knocks him out with ice, and then
I didn't see that coming. I was curious how was it going to happen, right? Was
Me
it going to be the candelabra? Was it going to be the gun? Was it going to be a shove? Like we saw him with the accident. No, I think it was the second episode of the first season, and they showed it reflecting in the glasses. That was cool. Robert Culp, you're impressing me here, sir.
Well, I mean, compared to his last time on the show where he just, he made it up along the way because he didn't mean to kill. This guy wanted it. He was like, yeah, no. Okay, well, make sure you're up. I want you swimming. And the thing is, though, he really, really hates this guy. But the guy's just, I don't get it. Like the little bits that we're getting from him in any conversation he has about the person he killed after, he's annoyed. It is just the mere annoyance of his being.
So one of the side characters is the head football coach, because basically at the beginning of the episode, he's like ripping his ass, telling him what to do. So here's the thing. The general manager is the one that makes it happen. And, of course, they get rewarded for it. But the owner of the team's raking in the dough like you would not believe. College, doesn't matter. They're just, coaches get paid now today. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's just a power thing. It's like, motherfucker, I'm going to charge you. I work for your father and you're a scumbag. Well, if I get rid of you, I'm going to own this entire franchise and run everything. That's really what it comes down to, because you're right, they don't really explain it because you think it might be personal or something, like maybe he's sleeping with his wife or is what they're cheating on each other. That's one of the things about Columbo that people don't really openly discuss, is the fact that all the married people are in positions of power and have a lot of side action going on too, which I'm not saying is right or wrong, but it's certainly prevalent, especially when you're in areas of power, because as the episode goes on, there's definitely some stuff from the second act going to the third that I don't know that we're present, or as a viewer, which is disappointing, we don't have the ability to kind of pick out and see that this is going to develop into something, because about the only thing we see him do is take the hose and spray down where, he's tracking his footsteps in there too. And here in Central Florida, we have salt water pools, we have chlorine in them, and then you've got water from a hose, which is fresh water, which when Columbo shows up, that's where he kind of sees what's going on, but nobody wants to listen to him.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that is the key. That is the key thing that goes ahead and leads him to be like, okay, well, wait a minute. And then he hears who died. And I was just listening to the football game. I want everything. And yeah, no, from there, because Robert Culp, he's back in his office. The coach comes up looking for him, and he just walks in from the closet, and it's like, yeah, he's been here the whole time. You know, I've been trying to call you, but he set that up on purpose. He wanted to piss off the coach, so
Yes.
the coach would ignore him
Mm-hmm.
pretty much the entire game. So he would be left alone, so he could run away, murder, come back, and he had the phone calls as his alibi. But how was that introduced? Well, about halfway through the second, after we meet in the old family lawyer, can't even remember his name.
Walter.
Walter, that's right.
You can't trust him because he's wearing a bow tie, but he looks like a Walter.
How dare you?
Just saying.
But no, he
I dare you, sir.
Columbo's wondering about his shoes.
Well, because he stepped in the pool with one of his shoes, right? So he's half this episode, he's walking around with a wet shoe. This is great stuff. And the way him and Walter meet, this whole scene. See, in Columbo episodes, we've seen some great individual scenes where things are put together and they have a certain rhythm to them, a beat, if you will. And it's like a one-act play, really, really quick. And this is one because, you know, the new lady coming in and all these flowers go in the background. He kind of appears behind him. He helps somebody move in. It's this and that. So you got a lot of shit going on. You got the radio playing music, which has got this weird hum that Columbo's looking at. And then he's talking with the guy about, hey, where'd you get those shoes? I mean, it's like, that was kind of funny.
No, it is. It is. And actually what I just read said that scene was improvised by Falk. So that's neat. But I'm trying to pinpoint the moment because, you know, there is always the moment that Columbo has it. He just seems to have it from the get-go this time, though.
You think? I don't know that he did. Well,
really? Because from that first conversation that he has with Robert Culp in this episode, he's like, yeah, I just don't get good vibes from you.
Well, and sometimes we've seen where he says, you know, I kind of suspected early on because usually when you tell somebody they die, they go, what happened or why, or are they okay, or something bad happens. And he doesn't react that way, which I noticed, but Columbo didn't call him on it. So I can kind of agree with you there. And obviously he's got the most that he can gain from it, but it has to play out the way that it does, right? But I'll tell you, to answer your question, you know, when in doubt, you know, go with the simplest answer, and that's the dingling. Because it appears that the dingling truck only services certain areas. And even though a dingling truck was over by the dude's house or whatever like that, Columbo's like, yeah, I called them. And this is stuff you don't see. It's information spoon fed to us, which I kind of don't like, but it's what has to happen, you know. But guess who does have it? It's there at the stadium. He's like, yeah, so. I mean, the one thing I have to say about Robert Culp's character in this episode, though, from start to finish, out of all the blowhards or the different types of people we've had play the murderers, what I think he does best in here is, while he may have had some regret in the first episode he was the killer, in this one, I really do think his eyes don't betray him. I think when he's looking at Columbo and everybody else, he's not losing his cool. He's not like leaking emotion. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry. It's just da, 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 da. And then he gets mad because he's running a team. There's such a nice switch off and on between these levels of emotion with him without him even giving you, the viewer, an inkling of, oh my God, he's scared that Columbo's onto him. He doesn't think Columbo's onto him. He does such a great job of keeping that in. It's a fantastic acting job by him. I mean, it really is really tremendous. And for some reason too, I think, like we said before, the more we see Columbo and whoever the murderer is on screen, usually that determines how great of an episode it's going to be because of their interaction. I think they had great stuff together because he tails him at the airport, follows up to him with some other things. I mean, this has that Columbo magic from the first season.
I can see that. I can. It's just, it's so heavy throughout. See, what was it? The first episode of this season, it felt
the conductor episode.
Huh?
The conductor episode.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was that was an episode that felt fairly simple to it, but it was still very. If I were to go ahead and I want to introduce somebody to Columbo, that's an episode you could use that is light and all this. This is taking so many twists and turns that aren't actual twists or turns. It's just more information shoveled on in.
And unfortunately, you need it, right?
That's it. That's the difference. When we go ahead and we see the murder, most of the information is already presented to us. We have to figure out how Columbo is going to solve it.
I agree.
Every key piece. This one has like 3 key pieces that we never get to see.
Totally agree.
And I think that's what's so weird
frustrating
about this one. Yeah, it's frustrating because it's not,
because you have no chance of figuring it out or seeing the joy of it unwind by Columbo. And Hutchins' intuitions are fine as long as they're reasonable, or because it's something you said, it's something you pick up. But it's really not. This allegedly is one of the last minute things that he comes up with, like he's done in an episode or two. And by a character we don't meet until we see somebody snooping around the house at night, breaking in. And they're like, okay, what the hell's going on? That's not Columbo. And you get this beautiful little dog showing up and all that. And then it's the old classic Dr. No, James Bond, turn on the lights. You're sitting there in a chair kind of stuff. And we find out a private investigator who was hired by the family lawyer, Walter, the guy you can't trust, and has bugged the phones. And it's like, okay, I get he was looking at the hum. I knew that was important. I thought bugs, but honestly, you wouldn't know what a bug was back in the 70s. You wouldn't know any about that stuff. Nobody would. So it's like, we don't get this till halfway in the episode. Columbo writers, that's dog shit.
No, Maranya. It's not just that they felt it was cut because of that. Because it's very purposeful. All the information that comes to us is just it's deposited. It's like boom, ba-doom, ba-doom. And it's like, oh, okay. You're just sitting there going along with the ride. You're not seeing how Columbo's figuring it out. Columbo's just figuring it out. And that's what doesn't connect with me. Like I love Robert Culp's performance. I like the side characters. I like what was her name, Miss Babcock. He goes and sees her because
the whore.
Excuse me. Goes ahead and
escort.
Yeah, she went ahead and did the planting. That was her job, to go in and do that. She wasn't actually a secretary. But she got in the hole. She went ahead and planted things around, and then she was gone. But the reason why Robert Culp didn't call her out or destroy the bugs is because he was going to use it for the murder. That's not anything that you can figure out. That's nothing that's presented to us. He just has the radio. It's like, oh, okay.
It's a contact lens level of bad sometimes. But maybe they're just trying to screw with Robert Culp when he's on. I don't know.
At least the contact lens is followed by the potato scene.
Right.
But here it's just, I don't know. It didn't hit for me. That finale is good. That I like seeing the look of fear in Robert Culp's eyes when he realizes Columbo might be onto something, and then the clock goes off behind him and he realizes, oh shit. And that's great. And I like the final look between the faces, long music, and then you cut to the tape that's ended, and that's turned. That's done. That's fine, but it should have been presented in a better way. The murder is fine. I like the murder, but more information had to be given. Columbo is usually inserted later in the episode. I think Columbo finally makes an appearance within the first 10 minutes. That's not usual. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, that second season is a little different, so it does seem like they're trying different things out. We'll see how it turns out to be, because they're always wanting to fine tune it and spike it for ratings and assume things will work. That's what screwed up Twin Peaks back in the days. They said you got to reveal the killer when it's the killer's just a reason to explain how stories unfold. And Twin Peaks did take a dump after that, as far as fan interest and some other things too. But in this episode, I guess I got so accustomed to seeing the murders happen kind of earlier on, or maybe it didn't take so long to get to them, that they said, hey, we can stretch this out a few minutes. We'll have them walk around in the full trench coat and glasses and a hat during midday driving a car, even though he's a conductor. Yeah, that'll work. People will believe that. I don't mind silly like the ice cream truck dingling or whatever. Maybe it was a real name. I don't care, but it's, you can be too cute sometimes. And then here, you knew from the way they included all the stock footage of the football games and the stadium, and there's a shot of Columbo coming into the stadium that they zoom away from. Instead of a crash zoom, they're zooming back, and it shows you how far away that camera was. And back then, that was a much harder shot to get because of the size of the equipment, and things are still analog, right? So it looks great. It's a beautiful scene. It's a nice piece of cinematography. But that in itself is just fluff. It's not key to it. But the idea that we would have to go halfway through the episode to find out that the chick he was hooking up the Playboy, a young boy owner with, was really, a plant that had got fired a couple of days in, and she's really an escort. They're supposed to be a ha-ha when Columbo comes in to kind of talk to her and, hey, I'm the police, I don't want any trouble, but do me a favor, let's put away your address book or whatever like that. For some reason, Columbo really likes to show the audience that everybody likes fooling around and having swinger parties and all that. Pretty soon they'll start throwing drugs there, and that's fine. But all I know is I want to see Columbo in a strip club at one point, if that will ever happen. But I'm ranting because you're right. That's the one problem with this episode, is that we get to a situation where halfway through, there's no way you can solve it. It's kind of like Sudoku easy puzzles. You can solve it, by one or two rules. The second one might require, well, if this goes here, and I can predict a few moves ahead. But when you get advanced, you have to do that because there's no way to do it. And so that's what this episode feels like. It's like, damn it, you're moving along at a brisk pace. You almost have too much information. Because I think the joy in Columbo is watching Columbo and the murderer kind of do the cat and mouse and escalating from scene to scene to scene. Hey, well, when this happened, now this. Well, now this happened, what about that? And then usually it's something small from the very beginning that we could go back and go, that's how we got it. Maybe we overlooked it. And even though they show it to you like the flower in the one episode, it's like, that doesn't exist here. You have no way of knowing it. And so while it's a great episode in that regard, I feel like it fizzles out here because basically what happens is he strongs arms the detective or the private investigator to get his license back and his equipment to basically turn over information. So he gets Walter and him and all of them together, and they go over hours and hours of these recorded phone conversations. I'm like, really? I kind of like to pull a block of ice, and now we're going to recorded calls that I don't find about till over an hour an episode. That's weak.
Yeah, but I will say it was good, the opposite effect, because he's listening for something to go ahead and reveal that oh, he wasn't there at all. You can't hear any kind of siren, any kind of thing. He was looking for something that shouldn't be there. He should have been looking for something that should. Oh, I do like that twist.
Well, it's interesting because there's usually 7-second delay they like to say with stuff. And back then I was wondering, because they focus so hard on the game, right? With Columbo waiting to look at the murder, but waiting for a score update kind of thing. And radio, I cannot stress enough how big it was in the 70s and how it really started to kind of die out in the 80s. And now you really just don't have music or radio stations anymore. They're just consolidated by a few owners. It's kind of like the music industry is dead, and bands and music and all that too. That's a fact. That's not really an opinion. But back then, that was huge because you only had big games in certain markets and national markets. So this was a big deal that probably dominated that market there, that everyone's listening to it. So at the beginning, as a sports guy, I'm going, okay, is he going to hear a certain play here that he hears at a different time? Maybe he'll get a time differential, and that'll be a clue or something. Like the only way you could heard that it was that he scored on this play, sir, was because. But what it is the very beginning. It turns out that Culp, when Columbo comes in, he turns the volume down, but it's still on. So that's really like, really? I mean, that felt like paid $100 and I got a kiss on the cheek or something. It was just very anticlimactic, this one. At least in the first one with the conductor in this season, he's like, congratulations, you're a genius, sir. Something along those lines, right? I mean, here it just, again, to me, it just sort of fizzles out.
Yeah. It's kind of just. It was an episode that we got to see enjoyable performances. It was a ridiculous setup for a murder that you couldn't see coming. You just couldn't. There's no. Well, let me go ahead and arrange a costume, and no, there's no setup.
Right.
There's no setup to the murder, and that's the problem. It's the murder. than solving it. And you get that pretty much everywhere. You get that everywhere. Columbo is supposed to do it the opposite way. It's supposed to set it up, take us along, and we watch how Columbo will solve it. We already have all the information present, but we don't here. And that's taking away one of the charming things about this series.
The other thing too is the woman that's involved in this episode. Usually we see them early on. Sometimes there's more than one, but the dude's wife, who's out doing charity events, comes back, and you think, okay, is she in on it with Culp? Maybe he's banging her or something like that, and they're plotting to steal from the husband because he likes screwing around with younger people and the escort. I'm like, okay, that would make sense, but they don't really allude to that. And it's like, she's just kind of a nothing burger towards the end of the episode. She shows up, she does the old, oh, I'm so stressed out bit, and it's like, okay, waiting for something more coming out of you, and we don't get it.
No. So I'm glad that you enjoyed this episode, though, because I know you enjoyed it more than the other two. But I still think out of these episodes that we've gotten thus far, the first episode of season 2 is the winner for me. This one is just really frustrating. I want to like it more. I do, because there's a lot of good things in it. It's just, it was delivered incorrectly.
Yeah, because look, this is not a bad episode, and Culp is very strong in it. It's worth watching for that alone, and it feels more like the first season to me. There's a spark in here that the first 2 episodes didn't quite have all the way through, or maybe they just smoldered a little bit. So I'm trying to get used to the fact that at this point, Columbo's obviously based off the strength of its 2 movies, pilots that launched season 1, and the short seasons that they are, right, because they're in rotation. The expectation of them is to do pretty good and treat them like movies, and I really respect that too. There's just a quality that I think in the writing and some of the characters that just seem a little bit more hardcore in the first season, that here, like I say, in season 2, we're starting off with him with the dog, with the annoying girl you didn't like, which I didn't mind. And I'm like, okay, they're trying to make it cutesy. And you can be a little too cute with stuff, and that's it. The whole shoes thing, the running, and it's not really a running gag, but when he goes to the basketball game and he asks the one dude, he's like, hey man, where'd you get those shoes? He's like, oh, I got them on Wilshire and or whatever it is. Like, it's like, okay, that kind of reminds you that he's walking around, because that's a great shot when he walks in. He's got his sleeve rolled up and he's got his shoe there and everything's wet. And you're like, that's TV, right? You don't have to hear it to know what's going on, but you're like, okay, that makes sense. And to me, it kept reminding me of the pool, right? Kept making me think about the pool. But then it turns out it's about bugged radio conversations and, the actual call of the game, which is fine. But yeah, I agree with you. Delivery is what takes away from Robert Culp's just absolutely great performance. It's not like he said, hey, I'm gonna go to 11 based on all these other guys, let me do that. He plays it so differently, and that's one of the things I have liked about Columbo. Is I look forward not to Columbo necessarily, I look forward to the interactions with him and whoever the murderer is, the murderer of the week, let's say. I don't even care about how cute and crafty it is. I really, really want to see who the guest star is playing the murderer and how well they do it. Because I think that would be like, as an actor or an actress, a notch on your belt, right? Like, it would be like James Bond. Well, I'm not going to compare myself to other Bonds, but I'm going to put my spin on it. So I think, to me, the vibe I get watching this is everybody who comes in and gets to be the bad guy, they really have to up their game. And I think that's a great position to have, because you just don't have some bum of the week that Columbo does. You have to have a really good villain for it to have the potential to be a really great episode. And this one, being a good one, has a great villain in it. I'll pretty much agree with you on that. Any other final thoughts?
I just wish the guy actually had a reason to kill, because that kid was annoying, sure, but he had no reason to really kill him. Like, it wasn't like there was an actual threat of him firing him. He just had to leave him alone, and he would have let him get away with murder. Literally.
Yeah. We're not even going to argue about the weakness of whatever there. I swear to God, though, here's the thing, though. This is 72 or whatever. I'm watching it and I go, okay, they're in Los Angeles, right? And so, like, Wilt Chamberlain played for the Lakers. The guy that's called the Godfather that runs the Miami Heat now, Pat Riley, I remember him as a coach. He played for the Lakers with Wilt Chamberlain. He's in this episode along with some of the other players there, too. And they don't have the Lakers jersey on, because you can't, I don't think you can like do cross promote that way, but you can clearly see him if you know what he looks like, because they're all, the guys are just fooling around. They're wearing the purple and gold of Los Angeles. And for me, a huge Laker fan, especially from the 80s, it's like, that was kind of cool because that was the thing back then. LA was like, you know, the West Coast scene of athletics on the Coliseum. There's a lot of LA in this episode that I say when Columbo does good too, and it makes wherever they're at, whether it's a mountain chalet or something like this, a character in the story. I think that's really cool too, but definitely a lot of them in here. But Pat Riley, he's got mutton chops and a beard. If you know, you know, as the kids like to say. So I'll say this to everybody listening. Thank you for watching, listening to Columbo Season 2, Episode 3. Next week, we'll be doing number 4. So look forward to seeing you guys for that, as well as Professor Pixel and RDV here on the Xtreme Movie Show. Thanks for watching, listening. Good night now.
Oh, one more thing. This is not a Dan Curtis production. Good night.
Good night now.